RetroDaze.
Outdoor games, also known as playground games or street games, are the catch-all names for a series of activities that kids engaged in while outside, be it in between classes, after school, or during the long, hot summer.
These games were pastimes we could exploit for free or with limited accessories, an important prerequisite for adolescents with perhaps no more than $1 or $2 in their pockets. Many of these games predated the 70s and often taught to children, handed down, if you will, by their parents at a kind of oral tradition of gaming. Hop on your bike and get pedaling to your best friend's house because it's time to play some nostalgic outdoor games. It probably goes without saying, but for as long as there have been children and outside, there have been outdoor games. It's simply in a child's nature to be rambunctious and active, and when let loose in the wide world with some friends, they will doubtlessly come up with something fun to do. While we're going to limit our list to organized games that have some kind of a rule set, it'd be short-sighted to suggest that this is truly necessary. We were all kids, and deep down we know that pretty much anything can be turned into a game with a single utterance, "I bet I can do that better than you." Oh, heck yeah, gauntlet thrown. The vague "that" in the previous statement could be anything. Who can get the most skips when skipping rocks? Who can knock the soda can off the fence first? Who can throw something the farthest? Who can bounce a ball the highest? Who can catch the most fish? It was all about the head-to-head competition. The internet and cell phones have made it possible to fill every spare second of our lives with content. If you're waiting in line, or a commercial comes on during a show, or you're stuck in a waiting room, you probably take your phone out and mindlessly scroll. When we were kids, if there was a moment of boredom, we often had no other refuge than our own imagination. There were no glowing screens filled with inane meanderings to fill our heads, we had to fill them ourselves. And in those moments, we'd invent superheroes, villains, epic tales, and wonderful games. When I think back to the many things I used to do as a kid, nothing is quite as pervasive in my memory as the simple yet infinitely customizable act of riding bikes. While certainly not a game in the sense we're discussing today, it was probably your main mode of conveyance to get you to the games, and for that reason alone, it's worth mentioning. Even so, in terms of gamification, there were plenty of ways to turn a regular old bike ride into a competition. There's the obvious bike race, but even more often we'd try to one-up each other by seeing who could pop the best wheelie, or really who could do it at all. Just as often we'd race down the street and slam the back brake to see who could do the longest skid. And when we were feeling particularly adventurous, we'd build small ramps with pieces of plywood or just find a small hill and jump our bikes as far as we could. While in reality we probably only hopped a foot off the ground, in our imaginations, we'd soared like Evel Knievel over 14 Greyhound buses at Kings Island. Somehow, we'd land safely in our best friend's front yard, ready to play some games which started with some variation of tag. Most accounts suggest the game of tag started as far back as the 4th century BC, when the Greek poet Irina wrote a game where one girl, labeled the tortoise, chased other girls until she caught one, at which point the new girl became the tortoise and the game continued on. Then, in the 2nd century AD, a Greek writer named Julius Pollux described a game called Ostrakinda, which was a team-based tag game wherein the flipping of a shell determined which team was it. In fact, different forms of tag have been played throughout the world over the centuries, often under different names, including chase, tig, it, tiggy, tips, tick, and tip, among others. According to Britannica, in many countries, the person who was it pretended to carry some kind of disease, for instance, the plague in Italy, leprosy in Madagascar, fleas in Spain, or lurgy fever in Great Britain. When played this way, there was often a way to become immunized, such as touching a particular substance like wood or iron, or performing some specific action like squatting. In our contemporary games, this immunization was more often described as a base or safe zone. Another common tag-like game was hide and seek, which added the obvious element of hiding. Though for some reason I tend to think of hide and seek as more of an indoor game than an outdoor one. I'm sure that's not universal, but if I was playing hide and seek outside, then I was playing Manhunt. Manhunt was like a combination of hide and seek and capture the flag. Put simply, it's a team game where the hunted have to get to their base without being caught by the hunters. Adding to the mystique, you could always play at night, which was how I always scheduled the games. Everyone would dress in black for added camouflage and hunt by the light of the moon. Another game that ties together tag, hide and seek, and capture the flag is Kick the Can, which was first popularized in the 1930s. Unlike Manhunt, this one is not a team game and relies on a single seeker trying to find the hiders. If the hider is found, they are called out and attempt to kick the can before the seeker, though there are variations to these rules. This is a game I never played with my friends, usually opting for Manhunt instead. Though the older I get, the more I ponder a particularly melancholic Twilight Zone episode.
85, 90, 9500. Here I come, ready or not? Hey, mister, that's our can. We're playing. Hey, mister.
Sunnyvale Rest, a home for the aged, a dying place, and a common children's game called Kick the Can that will shortly become a refuge for a man who knows he will die in this world if he doesn't escape into the Twilight Zone.
Some outdoor games required a little equipment, though usually cheap enough or readily available to allow everyone to play. Stickball, for instance, only required a stick, probably a broom handle pilfered from the house, and a rubber ball or a tennis ball. It was usually played like a pickup game of baseball with pre-existing foundations like stoops, manhole covers, or trees as bases. Another baseball knockoff is kickball, which of course only required one person to have the ball. And if you have that ball, you could also play dodgeball, though many prefer to leave that for gym class. One final equipment-heavy selection is the old summer standby water gun and water balloon fights. In the 90s, this invariably meant super soaker fights, though most often these games turned into a free-for-all wherein any method of drenching the other team was allowed, be it a water gun, garden hose, or a bucket of water.
Did I forget to invite you to the pool party? Well, maybe next year.
On those occasions when you need to make a big splash, there's the Super Soaker 100. It has a powerful air pressure system,
Oh, Buffy!
a range of up to 60 feet, and a drenching spray. The Super Soaker 100.
It's a water gun of a higher caliber.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. A precarious, rotted, termite-infested limb extending from a tree that grows in Brooklyn. The limb in question is the topic of street games, which are a variety of outdoor games that may only be familiar to people who grew up in urban areas. One such game is something called stoop ball, also known as up against, pinners, 3 outs, and off the point, depending on where you're from. If you can't figure it out from the name, all you need is a stoop and a ball, preferably either a pink Spalding, pronounced Spaldine by those in the know, or a blue handball. The rules vary depending on the region, but generally the idea is to have a pitcher who throws the ball at the stoop and fielders who catch the ball to get the pitcher out. We were never sticklers for a point system with this one, but there are ways to calculate winners if you care. Like stoop ball, box ball, sometimes called box baseball, made use of the environment around us and that trusty handball. The titular boxes were that of the sidewalk. Players placed 3 boxes between them, with the middle box acting as out of bounds. The pitcher threw, or in some variations, slapped the ball into the box closest to the hitter, who then slapped the ball into the box closest to the pitcher, attempting to shoot it past them without their catching it. The true art of the game was putting spin or English on the ball with both the pitch and the hit, attempting to get the Spalding to dance off in unpredictable directions. As the hitter, you do this by angling your slap, almost like a horizontal karate chop. As the pitcher, you'd sometimes squeeze the hollow rubber ball and try to spit it out of your hand with a flick of the wrist. It was a true art form and one best practiced on your own before entering the arena of the streets. One last street game is Scully, also known as Skelly, Skelsies, Dead Box, and Bottle Caps. For this one, you either needed a pre-made street board, which some parks had painted on the ground, or chalk to draw your own. The basics are that you and up to 5 other players flick your bottle cap around the board, from 1 to 13 and back again. Along the journey, you can attempt to knock other players' caps off the board. If you don't land in the numbered box, your turn is over. Once you finish the initial tour around the board, you shoot your cap into the middle skull and become the killer who hunts the other players, knocking them off the board. Once completed 3 times, that player is out. The true allure of Scully was creating the game piece, though. It started out with a metal twist-off bottle cap. Once you had your piece, you'd melt different colored crayons into the cap, often using toothpicks to swirl the colors and create a unique item. Not only was this fun, it also meant you got to play with matches or lighters, which might have proven enough fun without ever having to play the actual game.
With a little imagination and loads of pent-up sugar-fueled energy, there were so many insanely fun games we played, often requiring nothing but our friends. Heck, the number of games we could play with only a rubber ball and a wall is astounding. Handball, wall ball, 7-Up, butts up, just to be polite, you see, with nearly unlimited variations between them. And if you didn't have the wall or the ball, well, I know you figured something out. Summer days were long, and it's not like you had a cell phone to occupy all of your attention. So tell me, what were some of your favorite outdoor games? I would love to hear about it down in the comments. And if you enjoy our content, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and maybe even activating that ubiquitous notification bell. It really does make a huge difference. Let's meet again next week to celebrate yesteryear right here on RetroDaze.
Clicky clacky.